Thanks for joining us. We're going to hear from myself, then Linda Burney, then the Attorney General Mark Dreyfus, and from Marnie Pat Anderson and Rodney Dillon here. Today our Parliament has said yes to holding a referendum. Now the Australian people will have a chance to say yes to reconciliation and yes to constitutional recognition of First Nations people. The Uluru Statement from the Heart begins. We gathered at the 2017 National Constitutional Convention, coming from all points of the southern sky. Make this statement from the heart. It goes on to say, with substantial constitutional change and structural reform, we believe this ancient sovereignty can shine through as a fuller expression of Australia's nationhood. Proportionately, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are not an innately criminal people. Our children are alienated from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them. And our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. These dimensions of our crisis tell plainly the structural nature of our problem. This is the torment of our powerlessness. It goes on to, we call for the establishment of a First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution. It concludes with some powerful words. In 1967, we were counted. In 2017, we seek to be heard. We leave base camp and start our trek across this vast country. We invite you to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. Walk with us. Powerful words, a gracious request. And I say to my fellow Australians, Parliaments pass laws, but it is people who make history. This is your time, your chance, your opportunity to be a part of making history. It will be a moment of national unity, a chance to make our nation even greater, a gracious chapter in the great story of Australia. This change isn't about detracting from the 122 years of our democracy. As the Solicitor General in his written advice says clearly, it enhances that system. This has been the culmination of years of discussion, consultation and patient hard work by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people themselves. And what shines so brightly at the very core of its gracious request is the desire to bring us all closer together as a people reconciled. This once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to lift our great nation even higher. Recognition of this continent's first people in our nation's constitution. Listening to their voices on issues that impact them. Making concrete, practical change that makes a difference to people's lives. People making themselves heard across our great nation. In the regions and beyond, in the remotest corners of our vast and beautiful continent that we share with the oldest continuous culture on earth. All those voices rising across Australia like the headwaters of 1,000 creeks and rivers, joining into a mighty current, a chance to walk together as one to a better future.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you so much, Prime Minister. The person who is physically not here today, but I can assure you that he is here in spirit, is of course our beloved Patrick Dotson. And I wanted to particularly say that, and he'll be watching, so hi Pat, we've done it. Today, everyone, it is a big day Because today the Senate has passed the Constitution Alteration Bill without amendment. This is the final hurdle to holding a referendum later this year on constitutional recognition through a voice. It's on. We are one step closer to finally recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our nation's founding document. One step closer to giving a voice to the needs and aspirations of Indigenous Australians. One step closer to unifying Australia and making a great country even greater. Today, the political debate ends. Today, we can start a national conversation at the community level about what a voice is, why it's needed, and how it will make a practical difference. And to those Australians who want to know more, I say this. The idea of constitutional recognition through a voice began with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is a generous invitation to all Australians to walk a path to a better future. The Uluru Statement was the culmination of more than 12 regional dialogues, 1,200 Indigenous elders and leaders from across Australia, listening to advice from the ground in communities. Now, politicians may not like everything that the voice has to say, but that's how a good democracy should function. What I can say for certain is that our democracy and decision-making will be enhanced by the voice. Because listening to a range of opinions is essential for good policy. And let me be crystal clear. The voice will give independent advice to the Parliament and the government. It will be chosen by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people based on the wishes of local communities. It will be representative, community-led, accountable and transparent. It will work alongside existing organisations and structures. This is what Indigenous Australians want. And this is why more than 80% of Indigenous people are voting yes in the referendum. Can I thank the working group, the legal expert group, and the engagement group members for their hard work, for their advice, for their incredible resilience over the last little while. This is not about symbolism or tokenism. It's common sense. For too long, Indigenous Australians have been consistently worse off than non-Indigenous Australians. The Closing the Gap data shows us that. It's a broken system, and the voice is our best chance of fixing it, because when we listen to people on the ground and consult with locals, they make better decisions and achieve better outcomes. That is why we need a voice. So vote yes to the Uluru Statement from the heart. Vote yes for a voice, and yes to a better future.
It's been just over 6 years since more than 250 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander delegates gathered at Uluru from all points of the southern sky to make the request for voice, treaty and truth. Today, the Australian Parliament has responded to that request and approved a referendum to be held later this year for our Constitution to end more than 120 years of exclusion and omission and recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as Australia's first peoples in our founding legal document. That constitutional change will enshrine an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice in the Constitution. And through the voice, we will listen to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities to create practical change and make a difference where it matters, in areas like health, employment, education, housing and justice. The Australian people can be confident that we've got this right and that this is constitutionally sound. No harm can come from this referendum, only good. The Parliament has done its job, and now it is up to the Australian people to take the opportunity offered by the Uluru Statement from the Heart in 2017, an opportunity for our nation to do better, to come together and to walk towards a better future.
Auntie Pat?
Parliament has done its job as it's supposed to do. It's taken us a really long time to get to this position, much longer than the 12 years that this is. In fact, we've been calling for recognition, respect, acknowledgement since the first boats came here. In fact, from 1840, we were calling, people called in New South Wales to petition the King. And we've always gone to, we thought, a higher authority for someone to hear us and do something to help us. So today, Parliament did its job, and now, as it says in the Uluru Statement, and the question is set, the amendment's set, so we can now go out and talk to the Australian people, which is what we said. It was a gift to them. We knew the limitations of politicians. They have a lot of things to deal with, but the Australian public, the Australian people, will decide what sort of a country we are. What do we stand for? What are our values? Who are we? That's what we're going to vote on in soon in this referendum. So it's big, it's important. This is a bit of a milestone, not a bit of it is a milestone, in who we are as a nation today. And I believe, despite everything that's happened to me and my family and everybody saying that, every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person in the country, there's a fundamental belief that you will all do the right thing at the right time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pat. Rodney?
You're right.
Thanks. Thank you. This country's took a major step today, the first step towards recognition of our people who have been invisible in this country for a long time. Invisible. My ancestors behind me have been invisible. Today is an important step for this country to mature. It's only a young country, but we matured a lot today. And I see in the Parliament there today, when people from both sides was on one side, was very heartening for me to see that step. And that gives this country a great indication that we are starting to work together and walking together. Politics can be taken out of this, because in the past, politics has played a major role in this, not helping. And we've been used like a political football in the past, and I see today we're coming together and holding hands. So I think that these steps we take as a country today are going to be some of the most important steps that we take in my lifetime and in some of your people here today's lifetime. They're really important, and don't underestimate that. The things that's happened to our people in the past are no joy. There's no joy in the prison system. There's very little joy in the education system, the housing system, all these systems that have been broken down and not working. This will play a role in giving advice on making those better. This is an important role that this is going to play for this country. I see the social determinants on the other end that are so wrong, and I can see that this can be so right for this country. So the reason I support this and this government and the opposition as well, to work together to make change for better for our people, because it hasn't been like that. We've been in a war zone for a long time. So I think that this makes that change, and it puts our hand out. Our hand goes out to everyone to make change in this country, and I just see that as an important role. So having those outcomes from the advice that this group will give our country is going to be so important, and all it is advice. at this stage. It is important for us to take notice that this is advice to make change, to make it better for our people, because it hasn't been better. And we want to make that change. We see it everywhere. Everyone in this room knows where Aboriginal people sit in this country, and this can make a huge change. And I think that I'll be interested to see in 10 years' time who's standing here and how much change it's made. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rodney. Questions, Dave?
Prime Minister, we've just seen, or any Australian who's just watched the Senate would have seen some pretty full-on division there over this reform. On one hand, we had Lydia Thorpe saying she's voting no because this is powerless. On the other hand, we had Pauline Hanson saying she would vote no because it's going to be too powerful. What's your answer to Australians who might have seen that? Will this have any power at all? And on the division that's in the Senate today, won't that just undermine the voice, that conflict? And does it worry you that it might defeat the voice?
There's a lot of questions in there, David. So congratulations on that. I'd make a few points. One is that if people look at the balance of some people saying this goes too far, some saying it doesn't go far enough, I say we've got the balance right. We've got the balance right. This will be an advisory body that is not a funding organisation, will not run programs, and will not have the power of veto over the decisions to be made in the National Parliament. It is just that, an advisory body. But voice is a powerful word because it will give First Nations people a voice. And it's up to us to listen to that voice. The truth is that for most people watching this, it will have no direct impact on their lives. But it just might make lives better of the most disadvantaged group in Australia today. We've been doing things for 122 years for Indigenous people, often with the best of motives. It hasn't worked. If you do the same thing the same way, you should expect the same outcome. This is an opportunity to do things better, to instead of doing things for Indigenous Australians, make change with Indigenous Australians, to overcome, as I said, quoting the Uluru Statement, the torment of powerlessness. Powerful 3 words that say so much. We seek the opportunity for us to listen. And I believe that we've got that balance right. It doesn't change our system of government, but it does give people a voice. Chloe?
Minister, do you think people have actually got their heads around what the voice actually is yet? And how much of an influence do you think the pamphlets will be for voters?
I think the pamphlets will be one thing that they will consider, but they'll consider other things as well. The truth is, not every Australian knows we have a constitution. That's the truth. Many Australians will focus when the referendum is called, which needs to be called like a federal election 33 days out. So many Australians will just begin to focus, and that was always going to be the case. That's the nature of the lives that Australians have, where they are focused on things that directly impact on them. They will know now that they will have an opportunity to vote in the last quarter of this year, and as the referendum approaches the date, there will be greater focus.
Prime Minister, what's the timeline from here? Would announcing a date sooner rather than later help charge the campaign for and against?
Well, we'll have a discussion about that, but let's be very clear about this. When I went to, people can't say I held back. Within the first sentence of my being not even declared Prime Minister, but the first public statement I made was about this. I then went to Gama and put forward draft words. I then, last year, said that Parliament would consider it in the House of Reps in March, and then we'd have an inquiry and then determine it in June. And I said that it would be in the last quarter of this year. So it can be any time now from 2 months and 33 days and 6 months. That's the time frame between. So we'll have discussions, including with my friends here, about a precise date. But people know that it is coming in that last quarter, and I think we've been very transparent and open about that to give people the opportunity to give consideration to it. But to go to the previous question, for many Australians, they will focus, I'm sure, in the month leading up to the referendum.
Prime Minister, you said the time for politics is over. Members of your caucus last week had expressed concern that the Yes campaign hadn't done enough to step up quickly and allowed the No campaign to gain a foothold. Do you share those concerns, and what's your message to the people running the campaigns today?
Well, that's not right. I'm actually the Prime Minister and go to caucus meetings, and that was not expressed. What we continue to do, we know that getting constitutional change in Australia is a difficult thing to do. We know that from history. They also said that you couldn't win a by-election from that was held by the opposition if you were the government. We did that just a little while ago. What we're doing here is something that frankly is more important than any by-election that has ever been held. This is about who we are as a nation and whether we'll move forward more reconciled. The campaign is being led by the people in this room and others, the thousands of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who were part of this process leading up to 2017. That's as it should be. This is something that hasn't arisen in Canberra. This is a voice to Canberra from every region, from remote communities, from every corner of this land under the southern sky, as the Uluru Statement says. So we will continue to be part of a campaign, though. I intend to campaign. People in my caucus intend to campaign. People in the Liberal Party will campaign. People across the board will campaign. What we see, what I see, is that people in the business community have declared their support. Every major peak business organisation has declared support. The trade union movement have declared support. Every major sporting code has declared support. Every major faith group in Australia has declared their support. Civil organisations like ACOS and Salvation Army and others have declared their support. That support has been won by people who have examined it, who have looked at their own organisations and had their own processes. But now it's up to the Australian people. Everyone has one vote, and I encourage people to engage in the debate as we go forward.
Prime Minister,
Yep.
Prime Minister,
Katrina?
just further on that, and perhaps to some of the campaigners around you as well, the
Sure.
confidence that everyone seems to have in the outcome of this referendum, is that backed up by concrete numbers?
Yeah. I have faith in the Australian people. And I have faith that we will put our case, and I'll ask people to comment as well. But I've always had faith in the Australian people. You can't predetermine these things, and it's hard to win a referendum. We knew that at the beginning. We knew that. We know that that's the case. We expect continued misinformation, but we will run a positive campaign about why this makes a difference, and say to Australians, as I think my friend Mark Dreyfus here just said, where's the downside here? What are people risking here compared with how things have been working up to now. From my perspective, this is all upside. And that's why I'm very confident that a positive campaign will produce a positive result and will produce something that we can be proud of. And we go back to all the other advances that have been made. In my time here, the apology to the stolen generations didn't happen until there was a change of government, didn't happen until 2008 because we were told about all these downsides. Not one of them proved to be correct. Just as Mabo and Wick and all of these gains that have been made over a period of time have produced positive outcomes. But Pat or anyone else want to make a comment?
A level of maturity and sophistication is required here, irrespective of our political beliefs and the philosophies that we hold. It's a universal truism that when you involve people that you're making decisions for, you make better decisions and you better allocation of all the resources that are required. This is fundamental to any democracy. And you know, Australia is one of the few liberal democracies in the world that does not have any arrangement, any settlement with its First Peoples. And what's on the table is out of the disadvantages that many of our families and our communities face. Most of us here, including the Minister, we have spent our lives in the trenches, as our parents before us and generations. And there's like 65,000 years standing here. This is big for us, and we can do better than we're doing. And it's not a big ask. Yes, it has to have some power. Yes, and you will give us the power. When you vote yes, we have the mandate of the Australian people. And then we can talk as equals, more equal, with the Parliament and the executive of the day. So although the word advisory is used, it's a very powerful word in this context. That's why we went for an enshrinement in the Constitution, because we've tried everything else. We've set up committees, we've done this, we've done that, and nothing has worked. Me and Linda, the Minister, we have worked, generation of us inside and outside, trying to get, we do get advances, but only through our own activism. Nothing has been given to us. That's a falsehood that blackfellas get everything, because we don't. There's been advances and achievements, but through our own efforts, through our advocacy. And we're coming to you again, as we have done all of the generations before us. And we get questions like that. But we'll answer any question. But, let's get to some principles on the table here.
All right, that's a pretty good place to end. Thanks very much for that question, guys. Oh, Dan, sorry, one more.
I've just got two, if that's all right, Prime Minister. The first part, just you mentioned the stolen generations there, and I wonder if you want to respond to some fairly inflammatory comments that Senator Pauline Hanson made in the Parliament during the debate this morning, which I think will surprise many members of the stolen generation. And we've seen the tone of the debate continue to deteriorate, and there are people that are saying they're concerned to talk about their position on the voice to Parliament for fear of repercussions. I wonder, what do you say about how we have this debate?
Well, I didn't see what Senator Hanson said, but I'm sure it's consistent with things that she said in the past, and I don't intend to respond to them because I don't think that they're worthy of a prime ministerial response. I will say this. I will call for a respectful debate across the board, no matter what way people are voting, to try to, for the advocates, to do their best to stick to the facts, to not say things that they know are not true, And during this campaign, we've already seen, for example, the ramp up of what does the Solicitor General think? We published the Solicitor General's advice. No one talks about it anymore. We should not be very aware of the things that will be raised like that, looking for things that just aren't there. This is constitutionally sound. People should have a respectful debate, in my view. Australia will be a stronger country. I think very strongly about this. I'm completely unequivocal about this. I think I said when I stood in this room with some of the same friends here, I said, we're all in. Absolutely we are. Thanks very much.
Thank you.